Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation. Hey friends, what is up? How is it going? It is Leo WT. I have not seen you guys in so long. A lot of things in my life have changed, namely that I have this handy little degree right here now, so I can do other things other than read school books, which is fantastic. But I want to welcome you back to the Conversations podcast, or maybe to the podcast in the first case. The thing that we do on Conversations is intentional, spiritually minded conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. And the absolute single and only condition on that conversation is that absolutely everybody is welcome in it. So I'm Leo WT. I am your super gay, non-binary, lesbian, Christian, musician, pastor, host person. I don't know, it's a lot of hats, but here I am doing the thing. And I've invited another person who seems to be wearing a lot of similar hats as me to join me today. So I am going to let them introduce themselves, and then I'm going to tell you a little story, and then we're going to chat. So take it away, friend.
Hi, I'm Brandilyne Mangum-Dear. I live in South Mississippi, in case you can't tell from this accent, but you may know me from L Word, Mississippi. I'm BB, the former pastor. That's me.
Yes. So anytime I am watching a queer documentary, a TV show, anything where there's like queerness featured, and I see someone who not only understood themselves to be a pastor, but continues to understand themselves to be a pastor, this is a very niche market, right? Like people are not flocking to the queer fucking pastorate in rural America. Like that's not a thing. Right. And so I immediately had to message you. I messaged you, I think I was 10 minutes into the documentary when I started stalking you online and trying to find you, because
nice.
It is such the antithetical conversation to have, to say I'm gay as fuck. Also, I feel called to be a pastor, right? These are words that I was taught don't coexist. But all of a sudden I have this feeling in my spirit that I can deny neither of these things. So the world can do what the world wants to do with it. You can die mad, you can believe me, but either way, I still exist. And so I was really excited to hear you say that. And I kind of want to, before I publish this podcast, I'm going to drop some links to the documentary. So everybody should kind of know your story, but I'd like to share a story with you and kind of start from the point of the documentary on and see like what has been happening in the past 10 years and such. All right.
Awesome. Okay.
So there was this, I was in school to be a pastor. My bachelor's degree is the single most useless piece of paper that I've ever gotten. It is a bachelor's of science in pastoral ministry. How that happens, I don't know. My school is actually now, they're unaccredited and defunct. So maybe there's something going on there. But this is the fucking time when I realized I was queer. This is terrible timing between my junior and senior year of my pastoral ministry degree at a conservative Christian college. Dope. Yes. This is fantastic. And so in my senior year, I had to take two classes that were both deeply, I'm going to say they were manipulation. They were emotional manipulation, but at the time they were deemed spiritual formation, and they were required for me to graduate with a degree in ministry. And one of them was literally called spiritual formation, and the other one was developing a woman's gifting and calling. And so these classes where you had part of a classroom session and then you had a small group session, and your small group sessions, your first assignment for the semester in both classes, I didn't know it was so much similar, but your first assignment in both classes is to write out everything fucked up that's happened in your life. And then you share it with your small group. Super fun.
Holy shit.
Great. Yeah, it's really starting off hot, right? Like at a 10. And so I very quickly realized I was in the lesbian group. Like, that's it. We didn't have mixed gender. Like, all the small groups are separated by gender because obviously men, women, and everybody in between cannot relate without just having sex. It's not possible. So we had to go to this sort of culminating retreat at the end of the year. And it was after, there's so many other rabbit trail stories I could say, but I'll stick to this one. This retreat was at a monastery at Bear Mountain, right outside New York City. And my small group leader had me doing a talking fast for the weekend because I'm a talker, right? And so she figured, she heard the Lord say, whatever that means. She heard the Lord say that I was going to be fasting from talking the whole weekend and just sort of being silent and hearing from the Lord. And I was really excited to go on this retreat because I'm from rural America, and I'd been living in an urban environment, and we were going to a monastery in the woods. So I was like, during my solo time, maybe they'll put me in the woods and I'll get to like just vibe out there. No, they set me on concrete in between four walls of concrete. Like I was just sitting behind this building staring at concrete during my solo time. And I was absolutely so pissed. It is after a semester of everybody in my small group trying to not be gay, us affirming each other that, oh, that doesn't make you gay, or I would have never thought you were gay because you wore that, right? So this rhetoric has been pounded into me. And in that moment, laying on concrete, between concrete, fasting from talking at this retreat, I literally heard God say to me, please don't send me to the loony bin later, but on everything that I've ever known in my life, I swear to you, I heard the universe say to me, you are loved just the way you are.
Yes.
Period. And it was audible. And from that moment forward, I had the previous 4 years been just fighting coming out. I apparently thought that abusing myself, not eating, overworking out, going to church all the time, these things would make me not gay. But it turns out I'm actually just super fucking gay and a Christian at the same time. It's not even a sexy thing to be a Christian, honestly. The name is there's a lot of problems, but I just know I am this person. And from that moment forward, I knew that's who I was. So what, like I said before, what I did with it, up to me. How the world reacts to it, up to the world. But the fact that I exist is absolutely unfucking deniable. And I feel like if I heard your story correctly in the documentary, that's kind of the place that you came to in your life and ministry right around when you guys were filming. It was that sort of, this is who I am and now I'm going to act on it and do what I need to do. So maybe if you could just give us a little bit of insight about sort of if there's a moment where that you knew that you were both gay and this was your calling, or wherever you want to start us off from right around that time.
Oh, wow. Well, I had been in the church and been a pastor for, let's see, almost 10 years
Okay.
when I had opened a recovery center for drug addicts and alcoholics, and it had just opened. Like my ministry had blown up over the years. I won't go into the backstory. You can watch the documentary and get all of that.
Yeah.
But I had just gotten my recovery center opened. It was for 10. There was 10 women, housed 10 women. And oh goodness, hold on, my phone is ringing.
It's all good.
Is that affecting the recording?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Then I won't even touch it. So anyway, my recovery center was opening, and I told my secretary, I was sitting in my office getting ready to do some things, and I told her I need a gym that will donate memberships to my girls so that they can, be in the gym, because they needed to get healthy. Because after, when you're getting off of drugs, you need to be in the gym. You need to be, there was more to it than just, eating the word, right? So she said, oh, come with me. And she took me to the only gym we had in town at the time, which was Susan's gym, my wife. So I went in there and I met her. She knew who I was because I had been working with, some of the queers, trying to get them straight. We're not only getting you off of drugs, but we're gonna get you saved and set in straight. Maybe not in that order, but. And so she was sitting there like this, and she was looking at me like this, and she's intimidating as fuck. And she's looking at me like this. And so I kind of stood behind my secretary, and I was like, oh, and if you give me 10 memberships, it's a tax, the whole spiel, right? Yep. You get the tax, the tax write-off, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, we will into it and I'll let you know. Well, she agreed to do it. And Susan, we had some tough conversations, and she started talking to me. And of course, immediately I'm like, oh my God, I've got these feelings, and oh my God, what is happening? And all this stuff started happening. And I'm like, holy shit. And it happened very fast. And I just basically, inside of myself, I said, I can't do this. I can't be a pastor and married to a man and have these feelings for Susan. I can't do it morally, because I felt like I was lying, and that
Mhm.
was something that I could not do. So
Mhm.
I decided to leave. I was going to leave my husband. I was going to leave the church. I was going to leave everything. And Susan told me, hell no. I did it anyway. Um, but I went into church, and my pastor said, after Sunday, that Sunday sermon, he called me into his office and he said, "Why have you disconnected yourself from me?" And I was like, wow. And I
Mhm.
said, well, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the church. I'm leaving and all this stuff. That's when I knew that something was going on. I knew
Mhm.
that I loved Susan,
Mhm.
whatever that meant.
Mhm.
And I could not stay in a place that did not foster that love. And so I left, and it was quite the drama, obviously.
Absolutely. There was
Hmm.
so it's so interesting to me because like in the Bible, right, in the Hebrew, there's like all of these different words for love. And so a part of my sort of trying to be straight journey was like maybe I'm misunderstanding this love that I have for this, arbitrarily speaking, very incredibly gorgeous woman that happens to be in front of me, right? Like maybe I'm misunderstanding it, or I'm doing
Right.
something wrong. Um, I would argue that the first time I ever kissed a woman was one of the most holy experiences of my life.
Hmm.
I would argue
Absolutely.
that because I feel like there was an image of divinity that happened, that it was revealed to me in that moment that I couldn't have known previously. And I don't, it was such a dissonant experience, just like you're saying, like that it was drama because like this is who I knew I
Hmm.
was. This is what I knew I was supposed to do. This is absolutely what I'm feeling right now. And for the longest time, I couldn't integrate those within my one being. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So you said you're a Sagittarius. I have some familiarity with Sagittarius because my wife is a Sagittarius.
Nice.
I love her. She's amazing. She's a fiery Latina. I have a type. It's a thing. I'm so freaking lucky to be married to the most amazing woman I've ever met in my life, but it's a thing. I had this moment where I kind of channeled my inner Latina vibes and I was like, I am going to let people pray over me to be exercised. And I have been exercised not once, not twice, but thrice. And I like to say that they were either shitty bottom shelf exorcisms or they were so good that I, had a beard for 8 years. Like I don't know, which you take your pick. Um, but the thought in my brain was that same stubbornness, like I'm not going to let them fucking say I didn't try. I
Right.
am not going to let them say that this was a weak decision, that this was giving in to my flesh, that it was any of those options. I am going to prove that this is real and valid. And after the third exorcism, I it was at my college and I went to the mall with a friend to pick up her paycheck. Pretty innocuous experience, right? I'm just standing outside of Bath and Body Works by the Panda Express at the Palisades Mall, just sitting there waiting for my friend to come out. And
Just previously exercised a few minutes
yeah,
earlier, no big deal.
it's fine. It's fine. I just did like the post exorcism afterglow. It's fine. In my refractionary period, if you will. So I'm sitting there, and this beautiful woman walks by me, and my head turned, right? My head followed her. And in that moment, I realized that there was not a single choice I made to have that attraction. That was a completely subconscious and innate reaction. That was just me. And from that moment on, I began my integration. And I don't know what it was about that moment, but it was as powerful as the moment at the monastery, right? It was just this like, well, yep, there's my empirical proof that I'm not choosing to be gay. Like I just am. And from that moment on, it was like, okay, what do we do about it? Like if you're not okay with it, die mad. I'm sorry, but this is who I am. And I guess, 15 years later, still trying to live into what that means for me now. Um, in the documentary, I think it kind of started to show the process of what that meant for you and how you move forward as a very queer minister in the rural South. You know what I mean? But tell me some more about like how you transitioned into owning that role after the big drama of you and Susan, like realizing that you were in love.
Well, I'm a preacher. I'm that's what I am, right?
Hmm.
And I love people.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say I'm a healer. I love
Hmm.
people. I love to help people. I just love people. And after Susan and I got together, I was like, I don't know what to do with myself, right? And so Susan's like, well, you're going to go back to school. And so, because, I was so hurt by the people, I went to college and tried to get like, I'm like, I don't like people anymore. So I'm going to become a computer programmer. We know, because of all of the drama we had trying to get in this Zoom, that was not my ministry. That was not my calling. And so I went to college, and after about 3, I was like, people aren't so bad. So anyway, so I went to college, but I was in college, but I knew I had to be with people. It was just something that I have to do. And so we started a group in our home.
Okay.
And when I tell you, nobody was out in Mississippi, you weren't out 2012. You just weren't. And so we started this group called Make Your Mark Ministries. And it was for the gay people, right? And then it was like, okay, so I could not at that point, because it was very fresh. I just came out, I could not reconcile my beliefs and my sexuality, because religion makes two things can't be true at the same time because of the duality of the system, right?
Right.
And so that's what was going on with me. I couldn't reconcile the two. So I just threw the ministries out and started the Dandelion Project. And it was just a bunch of, and man, let me just tell you, our living room was full of people. I put it out on Facebook, and our living room was full of people of all ages, all over the spectrum. And I'm like, where did all these people come from?
Yes.
And it was unbelievable. And so that was the beginning of, okay. And then we just went to war, because the timing was perfect. It was perfect timing. The state started creating all these laws. The first one was SB, hell if I can remember the numbers, but it was after the cake ordeal, right? You could,
yes, yep.
It was
the
that
cake.
first one.
If you're gay and you lived through this time period, you know about the fucking cake.
Right. And that was when, Chick-fil-A did the whole thing. It all happened like bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, let's go. So we ended up, my poor wife, she tells people I pulled her out of the closet kicking and screaming, but if you saw Susan, you know better. But anyway,
Susan, like me, was in a glass closet. It was no one else's closet. It was just our own private glass closet that we couldn't see out of.
Right. And so we started protesting. We started, we landed at the state capitol, and we started protesting, and all the gays from all over the state started coming out. And it was like a whole pivotal moment. And that's when, it wasn't long after that, that the documentary got in touch with me. And that's how it kind of got started. And then after the documentary, and I just, got all these messages, just hundreds. Me and Susan stayed up all night answering these messages. I still answer all the messages. If you
answered me almost right away. Yeah.
I mean, I just do. And that was something that we made it it's very important to us. So we do that. But, and then, it was like, well, let's start church, and LB and I, opened a community center, and, LB did it. I mean, I was just the vice president of the board, LB really did it. And we came together and we did that. And that's where I started the church.
Okay.
Cause Susan's like, well, we need it. And so people wanted to reconcile their beliefs with their sexuality. And so that's where we started, was at the church. And so it started out the Dandelion Project Ministries, and it ended up being Joshua Generation. And the MCC church reached out to me, and I ended up becoming affiliated with the MCC church. And so later on, there's so much that happened. I don't even know where to go.
I know.
There's been so much. We later on, we got marriage equality.
Yeah.
I was able to officiate the very first same-sex couple in the state of Mississippi on decision day. There were 3 marriage licenses issued that day, and I officiated all 3 of them. One of them was Cam and Amber.
Yes.
From the documentary.
I found Amber on TikTok, and we've been chatting too, by the way. She's like, oh, I love BB. I can't wait for you guys to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I did that. And then immediately when we got marriage equality, the state created another bill, and it was HB 1523. And this one was horrible. We had the work, all the the red states did that, right? They just they put out these bills that just they wanted us to know where we stood, right? They wanted us to know where we went. And so my church, myself and my wife all became plaintiffs in the state in the case against HB 1523. So I'm probably the only pastor in history and the only church in history to sue the fucking state of Mississippi and the governor.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
did that, and
Yes.
we won locally.
All right.
The district attorney said, I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to waste Mississippi's money. Well, the governor got private funding and fought it. And so we ended up,
That's
so it
fucked.
ended up, it was very fucked up. And so we went to the Fifth Circuit, and we lost at the Fifth Circuit. So we appealed to the Supreme Court because they said we didn't have standing. They said no one's been harmed by it. What do you mean no one's been harmed by it? This harms our mental health. What do you mean? This is a
Could you please quantify harm, please?
I need to understand that. And so the Supreme Court refused to hear it. And so it is a law. We did that. What else did we just went, I mean, we got involved in everything, anything and everything. I was battling. I was at war, like you said, proving that I had rights. I had a right to be queer and, Christian or just fucking queer, man. Whatever. But I had this huge church in the middle of Mississippi that was full of gay people. So
I fucking love that. I think that's fantastic. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say my real feels here, because in my newly estrogen-filled body, there's just so many more feelings than there was with the testosterone. But like, you are my literal version of a rock star. I always joke that I'm in a super niche market, but like, if I was to pick a rock star, it would be folks like you or some other queer theologians or whatever. Because I'm living this life that you're talking about. I'm living where you were right after the documentary right now in New York. I live in fucking New York, and I have had my business vandalized. A brick went through a window that had a sign on it that said the first Pride was a riot against police brutality, #Happy Pride, #Black Lives Matter. A brick went through that exact spot on the window, and the police said, yeah, there's nothing to prove it was a hate crime. They told me if the brick had said, fuck you, faggot, then it would have been a hate crime. So a couple months later, I'm walking my dog, and my neighbor decides to verbally assault me, screaming faggot, and the cops say, it was just his First Amendment rights. I live in New York State. And I'm having these same conversations right now. You know, what's real ironic, though, is that a couple of years ago, our library, if there is anybody who will save the world, it will be librarians. They will literally single-handedly save our existence. But our library was going to throw a drag queen story hour. And this local person who I am well acquainted with and will not say publicly because it could have legal ramifications, they decided they were going to throw a protest over the corruption of our youth. So that person and 3 little old ladies showed up with their Bible verses on signs, and 150 people showed up in support of the drag queen story hour. So good fucking job getting us organized, because you know what we realized? There were a lot of us queers here. And so now we're in this space where I have met more queers living in rural Western New York than I ever did when I lived in New York City. And I'm having this reimagining of my sense of purpose in the world. And I know what I need to do. I just don't know how to fucking fund it is the problem. But I'm supposed to start a church. And I keep toying with the idea. I've been working on ordination arguably for 16 or 17 years now. I've been working to get ordained. And I just haven't, because the original denomination that my education was through won't recognize my orientation, and the denominations that will recognize my orientation won't recognize my education. So I'm thinking about starting a community center, because let's go one way or another. Like, the thing is the spirit, I'm using your word now intentionally, spirit is moving, right? And I happen to be a fucking weirdo who can sense it and who feels called to facilitate it. And it's so inspiring to me to see you doing that in the rural South, and to see how fucking far you've come since then, because there are days when I'm just like, I don't have any more energy after work. I don't have any more energy to answer people. I don't have any more energy to help people find counseling, but they keep messaging me because there's such a huge need. And this is 10 years later in the fucking North. Like we're in a battle. Like I don't know how else to state it. You know what I mean?
And oh gosh, I'm going to say something to you, and I want you to know I've never been ordained.
Really?
Never.
Mm.
I was affiliated with the MCC church.
Mm-hmm.
They would not ordain me because what you need to understand is my education
Didn't
it wasn't
match.
enough. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have enough. And so
Mm-hmm.
they wanted me to go and get all these other, and I asked them, that there's a system,
Mm-hmm.
and the system is a little ridiculous. What's stopping you from opening up your house or going and renting a community center and having fucking church, man?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need an organization
Mm-hmm.
to affirm you. This
Mm-hmm.
is what you are. This is who you are. To hell with the system
Mm-hmm.
that says you have to have this piece of paper or this behind your name.
Mm-hmm.
That does not even compute to me.
It doesn't, and especially when this same system, this is a problem with systems, and this is why I firmly believe that queer liberation will save the world, because queer liberation is for everyone. Because these same systems are the same underpinnings of other systems that keep us tethered, right? It's
Right.
systems of white
Exactly.
supremacy, it's systems of patriarchy, it's systems of colonialism, it's systems of compulsory heterosexuality, it's systems of racism. All of these things are undergirding the systems that keep us stuck. And that is why I will literally always head to the streets when there is a minority ally that needs support. Because a strike at patriarchy and a strike at systems of religious qualification that are based on white supremacy and classism, those are the same fight. You know what I mean? Those are the same fucking fight. And I think that was the thing that really woke up my spirit during the COVID and George Floyd era was we are fighting and marching for the same fucking things. And we are fighting and marching for the same things that Dr. King marched for. And we are fighting and marching for the same things that the suffragettes marched for. And we're fighting and marching for the same things that black women, black trans women or trans women of color threw bricks for at Stonewall. We're still fighting the same battles. And we need to get real queer with it and join hands with those of us who are crushed under the boot of the system and fight fucking back. That's my whole thing right there, because it's the same system underpinning that system of we're going to dispense religious approval for you to go do this now. Whew, you're gonna get me preaching, sorry.
Oh, please preach. And that's that's the thing. This journey has been quite intense
Mm-hmm.
for me because I had this incredible spiritual awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and I went straight into the church, and the church put me back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
The dogma and the doctrine and the duality. I mean, and so, but I read scripture in a way that is different,
Mm-hmm.
and I see it so differently, and I have this different understanding of it, and so I had to face that religion, that dogma
Mm-hmm.
in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And doing so, I was so angry, and so I was just at war trying to be at peace.
Right.
And it was and finally spirit was like, you are fighting war with war. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to go deep inside of myself and see why I'm at war. Was a long process, but it was like spirit began to my whole belief system began to crumble,
Mm-hmm.
and that was hard. So I started diving into other religions and all the different, and I started reading all these texts and looking at all these texts, and I was just like, oh my gosh, they're the same. First of all, they're the same fucking story, man. And so I'm listening and I'm reading, and I was reading all these things, and I kept finding myself in these scriptures, in these stories, in these texts. And I said, okay, all right, Spirit. I said, I keep finding myself. Why am I finding myself in all of these texts? And Spirit said, well, who are you looking for? And that was one of those moments where I just stopped, and I was like, wow. And you can lock me up too, because Spirit speaks to me too. But Spirit said, you are the Christ. And if you'll accept that, you will be saved. And I was like, well, fuck, I had that wrong the first time, right?
Got some shit mixed up.
It was like, wait a minute. And so it was like realizing that I am, and you are, and everyone else is. And I was literally battling my own shadow. And that was when that was really hard for me. And I know I'm kind of going off on something you probably weren't expecting, but it was like in that moment, I realized that Christianity is a golden calf. Now, let me explain that to you, because I started looking at it, and Spirit, this is how Spirit showed me the word Christian. Okay. Christ, I-A-N. I-A-N means belonging to. And that creates duality. Now, Jesus came to teach us that we were God. We're gods, right? That's Jesus's words. It's in the Bible. Look it up. You can Google it. You can, whatever. You can burn me at the stake later. It will be the first time. And so, but Jesus came to teach us that we were gods. But he also knew and understood that this message was going to be hijacked and corrupted by the church.
By systems.
He told us that.
Yep.
Yeah, by the systems. And he told us that. When he said, I must be lifted up as Moses lifted the serpent in the desert. He said that before he was crucified, remember? Now, if you go and, follow that story, Moses, the people, when they were walking in the desert and they were getting bit by serpents and they were dying, and Moses went to God, and God said, well, I want you to fashion the serpent on the pole, and people would look upon it and be healed. I'm going to be preaching in a minute. So
go for it. I'm here for it.
And so when they looked upon the serpent, right, they were healed. Now, it was an act of faith. It really had nothing to do with the serpent, right? It was simply igniting the divine healer within the person, igniting the Christ within. So when they looked at it, it just turned it on, right? And this is like a big metaphor, which the whole damn thing is.
That's
right?
the whole thing. Yep.
I mean, the whole damn thing is. And so, as humanity does, they put something, their belief in something outside of them, and then they turned this serpent into an idol. And Jesus was telling us that when he said, I must be lifted up as Moses lifted the serpent. And the pole in that story in the Old Testament had to be destroyed because it had become an idol. And I believe that's what we have to do with our belief in Christianity, because it has become an idol.
I agree. And I feel like the people have done the same thing with the Bible too, because people will, at what point are people Bibleans or Paulinians, right? If we're just if we're going to subscribe to a lot of the words of Paul, like what we've put other things at the center and forgotten that, God said, like Jesus literally said, like, we're made of the same stuff.
Right. We're all the same. That's what we have. And that's everybody. And that's where we have to get to the place where, we are fighting for a fucking bronze snake, man. It's not significant. Like we are fighting one another. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing, man? Yeah. Why are we doing this? Why are we still fighting? Because I'm just fighting myself.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, this goes back to, so I'm a non-binary person, right? I'm very bad at fitting in boxes. I'm also very skilled at seeing the interconnection between things. Actually, my TikTok handle
Same.
is spiritually NB LEOWT, which stands for spiritually non-binary, because the more I study, I feel like Christianity is my first language, but I feel like that's not at the expense of Spanish being right. Like English is my first language, but Spanish isn't wrong. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I feel that way about spirituality. I'm still
Right.
working it out, and I'm still working on the REV or whatever. So once again, burn me at the stake later. It won't be the first time. But I feel like that this thing that you're saying is happening spiritually is also happening like socially,
Yes.
in our world, right? These things are the
Yes.
same things, right?
Yes.
It's all connected. It's
And
all connected.
the systems are falling apart. Okay.
Hmm.
And it's like, because the message of the Bible is still there.
Yep.
There. That Bible is written about you.
Yeah.
Written about me, and it's
Hmm.
written about the person down the street, and it's written about it's about you find yourself in there, right? The message is still there, and the systems are falling apart, and there is a shift that is happening. And Leo, I believe that we as ministers, healers, whatever the hell you want to call yourself,
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, labels to me are limits.
Hmm. Hmm.
I label myself, I limit myself,
Hmm.
so I just try not to do that anymore, spiritually, especially.
Yeah.
But so I'm just a spiritual mutt.
I like
I'm
it.
a
I like
spiritual
it.
mutt. I'm a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this,
You're spiritually
whatever.
queer and queer.
Right, right, right. And so I believe that people like us, are going to we have to shift the way we minister,
Hmm.
because people, if you go in and at this point, I mean, I call myself a recovering Christian, okay? And so I know that I have this, religious trauma,
Hmm.
and a lot of people in our community have that religious trauma. They don't know how to reconcile their beliefs after being traumatized by them. And
Hmm.
so we're at this place where we need to heal that,
Yeah.
and to be able to find the divine within themselves,
Hmm.
and kind of break down some of that traumatic dogma. And as ministers, I don't think we can do it in the traditional way anymore. That's why I'm saying to you,
Yeah.
to hell with an ordination, and to hell
Hmm.
with an affiliation. If
Hmm.
you can get one, good, that's fine, whatever,
Hmm.
but you don't need it. And I
Hmm.
don't think people are looking for that anymore. I think
Hmm.
people are looking for something that doesn't look like the church, or
Right.
sound like the church, or behave like the church, and
No.
but it still has Christ in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has a little bit has to do with some generational shifts too. Because if you look at like modernity, it's very, if you look at churches that started in modernity, right? Like the worship songs are always like G, C, E minor, D, right? We're ending on a major
Mhm.
chord. There's a resolution. There's a plan. There's a bulletin and a church calendar. And if you look at like postmodern stuff, like all like worship songs are in minor keys and things are unresolved and the sermon ends with a question. And I feel like people in, like who are either open-minded, or I think I'm seeing it like, especially with my kids, like younger and younger generations, they're not looking for a fucking answer. They're
Mhm.
looking to live a life that makes a difference and matters here and now. And really, honestly, if your faith doesn't mean anything except an eschatological like escape hatch, you fucking miss the point, right?
Mhm.
Because if
Right.
if countries are sinking underwater, and if trans women of color are being murdered, and if
Mhm.
Palestinian babies are dying, right? What the hell does it matter about heaven or hell? Like, what does afterlife matter
Right.
if we're living in hell on earth? And how do we do things different? How do we come back to that which we always were supposed to be, right? I kind of view the spiritual journey. I used to be very linear, and now I almost see my spiritual journey as a spiral closer to the center
Absolutely.
of who I was
Mhm.
before it got fucked, you know?
Mhm.
And I feel like people are looking for that. And a lot of times our churches aren't looking to talk to the psychological issues that living under oppressive systems have created. But if you can feel and sense and see those things, then you literally can become a healer. Like that's the heart of it right there.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I have like my brain is like a browser tab with like 50 tabs open right
I
now.
know.
I I think it's really interesting that throughout your whole, all that you've been saying so far, there is a dual focus too. but it's not separate, it's integrated. And I think that's what makes it queer as fuck. And the integration is we are thinking spiritually, we are developing, we are growing, but we're also taking it to the fucking streets. And if you need a house and you don't have a house, we are going to lock arms with you and we are going to fight. And if, you know, if you are being harmed by a system and you don't have the social capital to stand up to that harmful system, I'm going to levy my privilege to stand up with you and to make sure your voice gets fucking heard. And to me, like, it's that duality, right? Of like standing up to corrupt systems and principalities and powers, right? Like, we don't fight against flesh and blood, but we fight against actual systems. Like, I think people miss the point of that verse, right? We're fighting against systems.
And that's the thing. That's the key, though. The systems are the idols. The systems are the serpent on the pole, right? That's what I'm saying. They're protecting these systems and idolizing these systems as God, as divine, and that's what you're like. Whoa! You're looking at the wrong thing.
You missed it.
And that's you missed it. Yeah. And the systems are the idols, and that's it. And that's, you know,
I feel like I just took drugs. Like, that shit makes sense. I feel like I just like had an edible and it just dropped. You know what I mean? I'm like smelling the color purple right now.
Smelling the color purple.
I just really like, I don't know. One of the things I'm really appreciating about your conversation is I've always had to put my foot in one camp of like, am I a sort of physically grounded person who believes in like social justice and social gospel, or am I a spiritual person who, you know, like used to believe that speaking in tongues was like a thing that I did regularly? Like, I kind of am embarrassed a bit how deeply invested I was into that sort of very, very spiritual branch of you know, like evangelicalism, Pentecostalism. I'm embarrassed to admit that, but there's some practicality there that I found really refreshing in looking at your social media platforms and stuff, because you're not afraid of spirituality. You're not afraid
Absolutely. That's what I do.
And you're not afraid of queerness.
I mean, as a matter of fact, I own a crystal shop. I own a metaphysical shop where I do Reiki healing, and I do psychic readings, and I do card readings, and we do all of the things. And I do speak in tongues. We just call it light language now. You know what I mean? It's complete. I mean, I've stepped into this spiritual realm where all of the stuff from the church. Like, do we throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater? Hell no, because the antidote is in the poison. And the word Jesus, I mean, the word Messiah and the word serpent in Gematria are the same word. Okay, so everything that the church poisoned me with also gave me this beautiful antidote, and all the things. Now I learned so many things. I had to have that contrast to see, to be able to see. Okay, we have to have the contrast to see, right? So I'm able to step into this beautiful free. I can take the things that the religion taught me. Some of the shit I did toss out with the bath. Like, to hell with this shit. That's dumb. You know, that shit's dumb. That doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about? But I'm able to take you know, the beautiful parts of it, and it's boundless now, because the dogma and the doctrines created boxes and boundaries that the divine never intended for us to have. But we had to know the boundaries in order to realize, hey, I'm not free. I'm not liberated. This isn't but we had to get there. And I believe that that's part of it. And one thing that Spirit showed me was, you know, the story of Adam and Eve in the garden. They got tossed out of the garden. There was an angel set at the gates of the garden with a sword protecting the garden so that they could not enter back in. Spirit showed me something. And I may sound a little crazy to you. I'm here to hear it. You know, I'm, you know, divinely insane. It's wonderful. We're all mad here, right? Yes. And so the angel guarding the garden with the sword is the church. It is religion. And they are feeding us the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And what we are doing in that situation is we're creating this beautiful, righteous scale that we weigh and judge everything on. And As long as we are weighing and judging everything, we'll never get back into the garden. But as soon as we break the scale, heaven is now. Jesus said, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That means repent means go beyond your mind.
Literally. Like,
and heaven is right now. And so the religion is there to teach this. I believe that it has its place because it teaches us that we cannot have judgment in our hearts at all. Like we can't judge. You just fucking can't judge.
Yeah, bottom line.
But it's so hard not to, right? Like, dude, that's, it's hard. But when you get to that place of truly unconditional love, life and the world opens up to you, and you see, you step into heaven.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to get. We have to get to the place where we're not just beating the fuck out of one another, and we're defending and fighting and all these systems, and it's just like it's a cluster.
I so deeply agree with this. I'm really having some real ass thoughts while you're talking right now. Like I'm very good at hosting because I can usually be thinking like 5 things and still talk, and I'm finding it hard to form a sentence because I'm so deep in thought right now. I had to read this book in seminary. I chose an incredibly progressive seminary. One of the best decisions I've ever made is going to a seminary, like a graduate school that was completely opposite of my undergraduate.
Where are you at?
So I went to Chicago Theological Seminary.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
This in contrast is my favorite piece of paper. I picked a seminary that was intersectional because I realized for myself, I always said that I was interfaith friendly and that I was open, but I never took the step to learn. And so in my graduate work, I learned from Buddhists, I learned from Black liberation theologians, I learned from queer theologians, I learned from imams, I learned from rabbis. Like most, if not all, of my teachers were queer, female, or non-white. Some of them English, not their first language. And we read a book called Circling the Elephant, and it was about being a person who is a theologian, but not being a closed circle, right? But being an open postured theologian. And I think it's an Indian sort of tale, metaphor, where they talk about there's 4 people who are blindfolded, right? And one person reaches out and touches something, said, oh, that's sandpaper. And the other person reaches out and touches something, says, no, it's a rope. And the other person reached out and touched something like, no, it's a sword or whatever. But when they took the blindfold off, they were all touching a fucking elephant. I feel like it's such a powerful model because it doesn't require me to divest my initial positionality, right? This is who I am. It is actually an abuse of my privilege to say that I'm not a Christian. That's the point I've come to, where I'm actually stubbornly staying, which is Brian McLaren in his book. I think it's How Do I Stay Christian? But he wrote a book, and it's like you can either leave willingly, you can leave stubbornly, you can stay and acquiesce, or you can stay and be a problem, basically, is the summation of what he said. And now I'm staying, and I'm being a problem, and I'm troubling the waters in the church because I don't have to divest my original positionality to be a better, more queer, using that as a positive adjective, person. Because I can circle the elephant with Muslims. I can circle the elephant with pagans.
Absolutely.
I can circle the elephant with Sikh people. We don't have to fight. We just need to stop idolizing the systems, use our first languages to speak, and literally bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. That's what so many liturgical churches, so many mainline churches pray the Lord's fucking Prayer every Sunday. Did we not take the phrase "Thy kingdom come" seriously?
Right.
The church global is saying that. So why is it not coming? Because we're not doing it, right? Sorry.
No, absolutely. And that's it, and we all have a piece of the puzzle. We all have a piece of the puzzle. And if we will bring our pieces and put them together, we will see. And that's it in a nutshell. Like, and what's interesting about it is I wrote a whole sermon about it, and we all have this piece of the puzzle. And when I was a kid, I'm kind of old. We had this puzzle. We always had a puzzle on the coffee table or the kitchen table, and we would always put it together. That's what we did. We didn't have we didn't have video games and stuff like that. Well, I mean, whatever, it wasn't that bad. Wasn't that long ago, but and we would put this puzzle together, and we would always start with the boundary, right? You would always start with the outside of the puzzle and work its way in. And this is not like that. we all have a piece of the puzzle, and there is no boundary. There's it's always, it's ever growing, and it's infinite. And we all, if we will just come together and see, I don't need you to change what I believe. I need you to accept what I believe.
Yep.
And I can show you what I believe. And that's what my place is, the Red Jasper here. It's like, it's a healing center is what we call it. And then people from all over, all walks of life, all belief systems, all in Mississippi,
I love
in
that.
Mississippi, I've got pagans and witches, and I've got Hindus, and I've got, when we all come together, and we have this space where everybody can come in, and we can, and everybody's religious beliefs are accepted. Christians, all the people. And I haven't been, it's, I don't know if I'm like divinely protected or divinely insane. I'm not sure, but I haven't had a lot of trouble in this space. And I have, I do, I'm in Mississippi.
You're in Mississippi, like exactly. Like if I'm having this trouble in New York, it's miraculous that you're living in Mississippi.
Right. And we have, it's amazing when you create a space, you realize the community's much bigger, and people just, they're just not worried about you. I'm certain that they pray for me every Sunday, and I'm like, cool, whatever, I don't care.
We'll just bring this product placement.
I win the lottery. I don't know, but I don't have a lot of trouble, but I have the space, and everybody can come here, and everybody can be here, and that, it's not like it doesn't have to be a brick and mortar. I am that space, and we need to be that space wherever we go, and just be that, hey, your piece of the puzzle and how it fits with mine, or, how it's different from mine, because I just want to hear about it. It's fucking fascinating, man. I love it.
And like, look what we can do when we come together. I've been really drawn to, I like words, right? Like, I think one of my core identities is like I will write a book at some point. But I've been really into the idea of alchemy, and I've been using the word alchemetic a lot, because I feel like truly when people who are spiritually, emotionally, socially aware, when we come together, there is an alchemy that happens that makes us truly more. The whole is truly more than the sum of our parts, because we're coming to that same place, open postured, and it becomes an exponential multiplication. We're not adding anymore, we're multiplying exponentially. And so if we can bring people together, if we can draw people together, if we can unite via love, despite whatever pre-described categories we have, if we can come together, it creates an alchemy of healing to our world. And it does it metaphysically, and I truly believe that it could do it physically, and it could do it legally, and it could do it in all of the lees, if you will.
Right, absolutely. And the thing about alchemy is it takes two things and makes another. And that's what I'm talking about, because when we have these hard lines, we can't come together. It's black and white, and when you have that, it doesn't come together. But when you bring black and white together, it makes something else. And that's what we have. If we'll just come together and be like, and it will create something new. You get something new, and that's
in school, I was
going to go off on another rant, but
it's all good. No, it's all good. In school, we would use the word queering a lot as a verb, and I view the work that I do as queering the world. Right, I'm queering theology by looking at things like what I was looking at, I was looking at epigenetics before I was preparing my sermon this week. Epigenetics is the idea that that trauma, and I mean good things too, but particularly trauma, can be not only intergenerational, which is like one generation to the next, but it can be transgenerational in so much as it physically changes and alters your DNA, right? So in my sermon this week, I was queering the conversation by bringing the topic of Christmas and the text that I was reading and epigenetics, and pulling those three things together in a way that gave us a fresh insight. And I think it's the same thing in the world. Like, I feel like my divine calling is the work of queering. And how I do that and how I fund that is all malleable and changed by time, and maybe not appreciated by the IRS. But like the work for me is queering. The work for me is reaching across boundaries and linking arms with other people and creating something more that could not exist were we separate. And I feel like that's that dog will preach.
Absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely. And
man.
that's, that's kind of what I've done with mine, because I stopped preaching
Mhm,
probably in 21. COVID came and we closed our church,
mhm.
just because hell, you can't afford to pay for the building if you're not
Yeah.
having church. But, and so we closed the church and we just started having church outside. And then we did it here at my shop for a little while. And then I just stopped preaching because my belief systems kind of
Mhm.
shifted. And and I went into that place, but
Yeah.
I developed a healing modality called Akasha Nadi healing, and that is I brought all of these systems, and I've just unlocked some unbelievable, because I brought them all together, and it's amazing, and it's
Mhm.
absolutely beautiful, and it's all the things brought together to see. And it's like it's beautiful. It's when we can open up to other ideas and other people, it's just beautiful. And that's what I'm doing now. So I
I
do
love to
healing
see
retreats
that.
now.
I love to
Hmm.
see that. So you shifted away from like a weekly service,
Right.
sort of Christian, whatever Western Christian structure into this sort of
Right.
more open space.
Yeah.
I love to see
Absolutely.
that. So 10 years out, 10 years out,
10
can,
years.
can you what is the single biggest thing that you've learned since the documentary come out? But in that whole journey that you've just summarized, what is one of the biggest things that you think you've learned in that decade between what arguably was a life and world changing moment with the documentary, but also now, like, what have you learned on that journey? What do you want people to know, like, to really take away from this?
I found myself
Mm-hmm.
and what I truly believe,
Mm-hmm.
and not what someone told me to believe.
Mm-hmm.
What or what I, I was told to be. I found my truth. I
Mm-hmm.
found myself. I found my divinity. I found my humanity, and I brought the two together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because they were battling. They didn't reconcile. My humanity and my divinity were battling for
Mm-hmm.
many years. And I remembered who I am, I guess is probably a better way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, I found myself. And not only, and this I may cry, but not only did I find myself, but I loved every part of it,
Ooh.
every part of myself. And I realized and embraced every part of myself, even the religious zealot that I was
Mm-hmm.
as Pastor Brandilyne back at, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, Christ Church on Second Avenue in Laurel, Mississippi. I loved her, and I even recently, very recently, like just a few months ago, went to see my former pastor,
Ooh.
and I went to his house and sat with him and his wife, and I hadn't seen them
Yeah.
in 10 years
Wow.
since I hadn't seen them. And I talked to him, and I was like, we had this conversation, and and I sat in his living room, and he just, he kept coming. I, he was trying really hard to just do whatever, and I was okay. I was like, and I called him Bishop. I was
Mhm,
like, Bishop, this is, I just, there's more.
mhm,
There's more. And he said, there's more than Jesus. And I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah. And he said, so you're saying Jesus is wrong? And I said, no, I'm just
mhm.
saying maybe you are, you know,
Oh,
and
that's
it's bigger,
mhm,
there's more than just, if how arrogant
mhm,
and grossly minimizing is it to put God in one book
mhm, mhm,
or spirit, you to say, okay, this is all God can be.
mhm.
And that's it.
Yeah,
That's God's bigger than that. And allowing liberating God is what I did, I guess.
that's
Liberating God.
that is
And
fantastic.
spirit showed me, This was the first thing Spirit said to me after church. I am who I am to this person. I am who I am to that person. And I am who I am to that person. And it's none of your damn business how I choose to reveal myself to my people. I'm big enough to be all those things. I told you to love them, not tell them who they are, you know?
That's so like that was it. That's the whole thing, right? Like that's the whole thing is that if you can understand, if you can wrap your mind around divinity, then you have fashioned it in your own understanding and existence. Done. Like shut the podcast off. Like let's go, right? Like
drop the mic, pass
it's
the plate.
just so presumptuous, to think that I, as an English-speaking, college-educated, American, like able-bodied, English as a first language speaker person, that I'm the center of the world. I'm not the center of the world, right? And the moment that you realize that, if you've made your God the center of the universe, you've done the same thing. You've cut off all of the other possibilities that other perspectives could bring to you. So,
right.
I don't even need to go to church for the next 10 years after this conversation. I'm good. I'm just go do shit in the world.
I'll tell you, I miss it. I miss preaching. I miss it so much. My wife and I have talked about starting something. I just don't know what to start at this point. Or how to even.
Yeah, I don't know what it means and where I go. And I don't know what being a pastor means when I am this person in this context. So now I have a podcast. I don't know. I've started writing a book. None of these ideas have really materialized. I have a funny and witty, sometimes serious TikTok channel. I don't know what the fuck it means to be a pastor in 2024 as a super fucking gay, non-binary person. But I'm really here just going to try and figure it out. But there is, I have to give you this one moment that even if no one else listening understands this, that we understand, is there really is something about preaching. And I can't explain it logically to people who've never done it. But it is one of the times when I'm the most alive,
same
in the whole world. So it's really refreshing to me. I feel slightly less unhinged when I meet other people who understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. And I that's why I love, I just love it. I love speaking to people, and showing them the truth of who they really are, and how powerful and beautiful and wonderful and all the things that is. And I love it so much. It's just it's the best.
It's the best everything.
Drug in the world, yeah.
Yeah. I'll wrap us up with this one sort of moment of realization that I had. But when I was when everything fell apart and I started to re-understand everything, really, I had to give up everything to be who I am now. I started to understand the verse, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life, in a whole nother way. I started to realize that perhaps who I was and who I was made to be was what I was supposed to be fighting to protect. I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, purity culture did a number on that verse, and they told us, if this boy's beep touches this girl's beep, then you haven't guarded your heart. But I think what that verse, if we would open our minds to it, might actually be saying is that we have to fight fiercely to find ourselves and to be ourselves bravely in a sometimes scary places, because that is where life comes from. And I think maybe that verse is saying something different than people have been using it to say for a while. But I really feel like in those moments and in those ways, that's when I see the biggest changes happen in the world. I feel like I might have lost you. Back.
Hello, are we back?
I think we're back, and I need that recording to be saved. I'm just not even going to look. But
oh God,
we're gonna hope it's saved. I did a really great recording with a trans female friend of mine who was a Southern Baptist preacher until she came out, and we had just the most amazing conversation. And I disappeared from my hard drive, and I've never been so sad in my entire life. So we're just gonna believe that this is on my hard drive right now, and everything is fine.
it's fine. It's all fine.
It's all good. If we have to, we'll do it again. I have no trouble
Absolutely.
believing that this could be a second conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time. Like, I really appreciate that. Even if, like I said, if 3 people listen to this, for me, this is a very important conversation to have, because it's very hard to explain why I will die on the hill of being called to be a pastor as me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is. But I really appreciate you and what you're doing. And it gives me like hope that there's a way forward as I am, right? Very excited about that.
Absolutely. And did you reach out to the MCC?
I
love the MCC.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to. I'm going to message them. And then actually there's this super, super dope queer theologian. Their name is Roberto Espinoza. We read them in grad school. They wrote a book called Activist Theology. And
are they MCC? I know them.
I don't think they're affiliated. They just moved to within 45 minutes from me. And they're like, if the United Church of Christ will not ordain you, don't sweat it. I will ordain you. And I was like, okay. So yeah, we're one way or another, it's happening. I literally just have to find a way to fund my life, because I won't let my wife die on the same hill that my dad, the pastor, let us die on, which was, working too long for not enough money to sustain our family. But something good is afoot, and I'm just really excited to see what happens. And I definitely think chatting with you was part of that journey for sure.
Well, if nothing else, start a damn nonprofit and get some grants,
Exactly. Yep.
I mean, you can't, whatever, but yeah, there's a way. There's one way to skin a cat, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The community center really resonates with me too, because there's so much work to be done. I mean, we need young minority people to run for local office. We need people to work on environmental change. We have really big issues with addiction in our area. We need to set up a harm reduction center. Like, there's just all this stuff that a community center could do. And to me, that's all the meat of being a spiritual person anyways. It's the practical, putting the feet to it.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'll let you know as I get this like edited and when I'm going to post it and everything. I might post a couple clips on TikTok, and in which case I'll tag your account. And I might be looking into, I'm trying to figure out the best way to facilitate it, but I might be looking into do some TikTok lives as well. So I will definitely keep you in mind as whatever happens next continues to happen.
Well, I've enjoyed talking to you. We have a great chemistry. We should do it more often.
I agree. And I was just talking to my friend Tiffany, who is like a super gay person that I met at Lee University in Tennessee when I was like in high school. I went and stayed with her, and she's now in Alabama. And I was just talking about how I should come to her house and play music. So maybe I'll have to make like a little tour of the South or something.
Absolutely. What part of Alabama?
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I'm not positive, but
just Alabama. That's all I know.
Yeah, she just moved. I know she works for a music venue in their like ticketing and sales department. So, but yeah, I'm
not too far from Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. So,
okay. All right. This is good to know. I have some friends in Tuscaloosa, so we could make this happen.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I will keep you posted.
In Tuscaloosa.
Oh, right on. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you have a great night. I will talk to you as soon as I have any updates. And of course, I'm always here because I'm just going to consider us friends now. Like, that's it.
Same. Awesome. Well, it was so great. I appreciate it so much.
Yes. Have a good night, and tell Susan I say hi.
I will. And I would love to meet your wife.
Oh, I'll get you hooked up. She's fabulous.
All right.
Have a good night.
Have a great night. Happy New Year.
Yes, same to you.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.